Sup? Rollin'. Hey, I'm Chey, and today we're going to be going over my latest book haul. Recently, my friend Kayla and I went out. What is on my lamp? What is that? That is the biggest fly I've ever seen in my life. Where did you come from?
Who is your leader?
Recently, my friend Kayla and I had a little nice day out together where we just got some coffee, went book shopping, and boy did I stack up on a lot more books than I meant to. The first place we stopped was our local library, which has a student book sale every Monday. The profits from the sale go to programming at the library and buying more books from the library. The hardbacks are only $2 and the paperbacks are $1. I get cheap books and I get to fund my library to get more money to get more books so that I can get more books. It's a win. Then we stopped for coffee and popped in at a few antique shops, thrift shops here and there around the local square where we picked up a few more things. I really just got a hodgepodge of everything. There's no theme to these books. I really just grabbed what interested me, particularly the ones that were either $1 or free. The first one we have is Men of Vale by Winifred E. Wise. Do I have to say more? Look at this cover. Is she a mermaid? Is she a minnow? What is the deal? It is clearly just this little cute illustrated children's book that looks like is like from the 50s or like the 60s, maybe even the 70s. 1962, that is when it was made, 1962. I couldn't resist this cover though. This was one of the free books. This was free. I don't even care if the story's crap. Of course I'm gonna read it, but just something about the colorful aesthetics of the 50s and 60s color just calls out to me. I adore them. So after I read this, I'm definitely gonna have this displayed on a shelf somewhere. It is just gorgeous. I'm not really going to be giving synopses of these books because honestly, I don't really know them. A lot of them I have some idea of the plot, and typically those are the classics or the more modern fictions that I picked up. But as a general rule, I don't really know the plot, and I kind of don't want to. I kind of want to go in blind and just see what I find. We have a classic, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This seems like a crime that I have not read this yet. You would think I would have read this in school. I know a lot of people read this in school, especially since I live in the deep south, but that's probably honestly why I never read it in school. I'm really on a kick of reading classics lately, and like I said, I think personally it's a crime that I have not read this yet, because I know how important and how prevalent it is. Therefore, I'm excited to finally be able to get to it. On the classics train, next we have William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying. This book, as far as I know, is about a family who is on a journey to bury their mother and their wife, and each chapter is told by a different member of the family, including the recently deceased. I've heard it's great, I've heard it's heart-wrenching. I've also heard some people really just don't dig with the writing style, and that's fine, but I've heard plenty about it and I wanted to pick it up for myself. It was only $1, so I thought, why not? Our next free book is Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus by Dusty Bowling. I love cacti. Therefore, just this cover alone immediately made me want to pick it up, but also, what a title! Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus. I believe this is an elementary, almost like a middle grade book, but it was the plot on the back that absolutely hooked me that I had to read this. Avon Green didn't lose her arms in an alligator wrestling match or a wildfire in Tanzania. That's just what she tells people when she gets the looks. The truth is Avon was born without arms, but at age 13, that hasn't stopped her from doing almost anything. Then her parents take a job running Stagecoach Pass, a rundown western theme park in Arizona, and Avon has to leave everything she knows behind. She makes a new friend, they discover an old storage shed, and apparently it's some mystery, it's some action, it's some adventure. Apparently there's a lot of proper representation in this book about different disabilities. In conjunction with her missing both her arms, I believe her best friend has Tourette's or something like that. I hope this book plays representation well. It seems like from the few pages that I skimmed that it does. Either way, it just excites me to see that sort of diverse representation of a main cast, especially a protagonist, in a kid's novel. This next one is not going on my TBR because I've already read it, but it is The Hound of the Baskervilles by author Conan Doyle. It is a Sherlock Holmes story. It is one of my favorite Sherlock Holmes stories from when I was a kid. As if I didn't need to seem more weird or nerdy to you, two of my favorite authors to be read bedtime stories from, or just have their works read to me at bedtime, were Shakespeare and author Conan Doyle, specifically the Sherlock Holmes works. I don't know why, I just always hooked in to this story. Maybe because I was just, as a kid, I was like, doggies! When it's not, you know, Apparently I had a thing for detection novels when I was a kid, but I have reread all the Sherlock Holmes works that I could get my hands on multiple times through my life, and I'm happy to finally find this story in its own little edition. It's actually been a while since I've read this particular story, so I may just pick it up for kicks in the next few weeks to remind myself, but I'm already getting very nostalgic just flipping through the pages. One of my first books that I ever bought at a Scholastic book fair was a collection of Sherlock Holmes stories. That's all you need to know about me. Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I almost butchered the title of this book because it almost became a tongue twister for me. Not much to say about this book except I watched the movie, I liked it, I've heard people really like the book, I wanted to read the book, I saw it for $1, I thought, why the heck not? The Man in High Castle by PKD. I'm not even going to venture to say his last name because I am so scared of YouTube censorship policy. I didn't even pick up this book specifically because of the plot, but because a few years ago I started watching the show that they made on Amazon Prime and I really liked it. Don't get me wrong, I didn't like it in that way, but I thought the concept and the premise was really interesting, especially as a weird history nerd myself, always thinking about what could have been or what would have happened if this happened or what would have happened if this went that way. If you don't know, this basically takes place in a world where the Germans won World War II and they take over America with Japan, and America is basically a divided country between the East Coast and the West Coast, where Japan has territory on the West Coast and the Germans take over the Eastern Coast, and in the middle is just sort of a lawless, sort of wild land. I never finished the show. I got started on season 2 and then just never picked it back up. I need to finish it just for the sake of finishing it. But because I thought the show was so interesting, I wanted to pick up the book that it was based on, so here we are. It was $1. Back to the classics, we have Great Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. This is just a collection of some of his short stories and his poems. I don't actually own any collections of Edgar Allan Poe. I have a few leather-bound horror collections, but nothing specifically dedicated to Poe that I know of or that I remember. So when I saw this and I saw the beautiful illustration of the raven on the cover, I knew that I had to have it. I knew that I needed this to fill in my Poe gap of my library. I probably won't read this until closer to Halloween time, closer to fall time, whenever I need to get into the spooky horror thriller mood, you know? Of course, though, now I'm cursed because every time I see Edgar Allan Poe, I think of the Raven, and then I think of one of my favorite TikToks.
And on my chamber door, I heard a...
Julia, this next one's for you because I've already told you about it. It's Annocheyte. Annocheyte, or as the Americans like to say, Enchantee. This book was in the free pile when I was checking out from the books that I was paying for at the library, and I could not resist it because, number one, it's clearly French. Look at that cover. Number two, look at the word. They're clearly, again, trying to be French to an American audience. The title says, Love, Magic, Revolution. I would love to see the love and magic that took place in the French Revolution, because we all know how Les Mis turned out. And don't come for me. Yes, I know Les Mis wasn't actually about the revolution, the actual revolution. I know, okay? I know. It's a joke. This book, though, I opened it up because I was so curious. Just let me read it to you. When smallpox kills her parents, 17-year-old Camille must find a way to provide for her beloved younger sister while managing their volatile brother. Camille pursues a richer, more perilous scheme at the glittering court of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. Using dark magic forbidden by her mother, she transforms herself into a baroness and is swept up into life at the Palace of Versailles, where aristocrats both fear and hunger for la magie, the magic. They're trying to be French American. Look, it's the magic. They fear the magic. This girl gonna use herself to transform into a noble at the time where being a noble was not a good thing. Really, the reason I picked this up is because I'm very curious as to how the author is gonna let this play out. I'm just really curious to see how she's going to get out ahead of this problem. I'm also just really curious to see if this book is monarch apologist or sympathetic to the aristocrats, monarchs of this time. Possible problems abound. The history major in me is both screaming and curious. Julia and I have been talking about this ever since I got this, which, if you don't know about me talking about Julia enough, she is French, so I know she's gonna have opinions on this, and I can't wait to discuss this with her. Julia, if you find a copy of this for cheap, you should get your own copy and we should have book club, okay? Cool. Next is Beach Read by Emily Henry. Not really much to say about this one except it's popular. I've heard people really love it. I've been trying to get into reading more I've been trying to get into reading more of these books just to diversify my reading interest. There have been hits, there have been misses. I'm hoping this will be a hit. I'm hoping I enjoy this. I also find these books are great for when I get into a reading slump because they're just easily digestible and pleasant to fly through. You also don't have to pay that much attention to the plot, so if you lose your concentration for a couple of pages, you can pick it back up real quick. Probably gonna read this for a Valentine's Day readathon. We'll see. Floppiness, though. Has good floppy. Then we have The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. This book takes place in 17th century Norway. Basically, there's a horrible storm with a bunch of ships down in the water. All the men are killed and the women are left for themselves. A couple years later, a dude from Scotland rolls up with his Norwegian wife, and they find this whole colony island of women fending for themselves, and honestly, they're kind of thriving. And his wife is like, I've never seen like a tribe of independent women before. This is great. Meanwhile, the Scotsman is apparently like, witches! I'm getting hints of sapphic, possibly undertones, but also independent gatekeeping girl bossing. Not only that, but her husband, the man who rode up and was like, this place is evil. There's no god here, only women. And his wife is like, the god is the women. Apparently he rose to prominence by burning witches, which, as you can imagine, his arrival on the island is not a happy one. It does not seem like it will be filled with happy, joy, fun times. I'm interested to see what happens with that whole mix of characters, with that whole situation and setup. Even more interestingly so, it says that it's based on real events that happened in 1621, and it's a powerful story of love, evil, and obsession set at the edge of civilization. You got me. Another sort of historical fiction retelling we have is Stone Blind. This is a fictional retelling, I believe, of the myth of Medusa. It's written by Natalie Haynes, the same author who wrote 1,000 Ships. I have not read that book. It's a book that has been on my TBR for a while. I've heard good things about it. I just haven't picked it up yet. I saw this at my local library for sale, and I was like, that sounds interesting. Give me that. I love Medusa. I love historical retellings. I love historical reimaginings. I hope this one's a good one. The Goldfinch, Donna Tartt. Donna Tartt, one of the de facto rulers of the dark academia genre. I may get thrown out of my little punk rock chaotic academia circle because I've never read A Secret History. I want to, but I haven't yet. I've heard both great and terrible things about it, and I would just really like to know where I stand because I've never read anything by Donna Tartt before. So I'm both curious to see how I gel with Donna's writing style, to see if I'll even maybe like A Secret History, and also just to see where I land on the spectrum of people who love or hate this. One of the last books we have is Kite Runner. Again, another classic that I feel is a crime that I haven't read yet. I heard a lot about this when I was younger, just about its representation and how powerful and emotional that it was for a lot of people, how eye-opening it was for a lot of people. I believe for my generation, Gen Z, older Gen Z, it was one of their first tastes of diverse literature being set in a area that is so vastly different from America, because let's face it, a lot of American popular literature, especially for younger readers, is based in America. Westernized, whatever. Therefore, I believe that that is partly why this book was so astonishing and powerful, but I'm excited to read it for myself and just find out what made it so impactful, and hopefully it will have the same impact on me. We have 13 Ghosts, Strange But True Stories by Will Osborne. Do I need to say more? It's short, sweet, to the point. It's about ghosts, it's about strange stories, good Halloween quick reading. I used to devour these books as a kid, and I plan to continue devouring them as an adult, because as is my human goodness given right. And last but not least, my possibly favorite book of the pile that I'm most excited to get to is a book that I've been meaning to buy for months. Every single time that Kayla and I would go out to this bookstore, I'd see that book and I'm like, I want it, but it's just a little bit too expensive for me right now. And finally Kayla was like, give me the book, I'm buying it for you. So Kayla, thank you. I love you. Jaws by Peter Benchley. I have a love and hate relationship with Jaws, especially the movie. I think for too long it has been used as villainous propaganda against one of the most precious animals of the animal kingdom, sharks. If you don't know that about me, I friggin' love sharks. I adore sharks. I have so much shark merch around me and in my house that it's almost ridiculous. But almost in like a weirdly masochistic kind of way, I kind of want to read the book that the movie was based on, because in itself as a horror movie, not the propaganda has been used for since, it is a good movie. I can't blame the movie for what people have used it for henceforth. I don't think it was the original intention of the movie to make people, like, hate or be afraid of sharks. I don't think that was the author's original intention either. And that is partially why I love it, because I think that even though we haven't heard about it, I think more good than bad has been done with the Jaws franchise. That's gonna be hard to ever quantify. But I think, as this book sort of puts on the back, it continues to inspire a growing interest in sharks and the oceans today. I've heard that this book takes a lot more of an activist kind of stance with sharks, and just plainly, I'm excited to read it because I love sharks. I'm actually rooting for Jaws the entire time. Okay, that's it. Take a breather. That is all the books from that haul, from that one little day outing with Kayla. I have plenty to add to my TBR. No more. I'm cutting myself off, at least until I read about 20 more books. In time, all these books will be featured in a vlog, a wrap-up, or a review of some kind, but until then, I have a whole playlist just of my book vlogs, wrap-ups, reviews, all sorts of bookish things, just for you. Make sure to check it out, make sure you subscribe, stick around for more bookish and random chaos, whatever I feel like doing. Thank you so much for watching. I really, truly appreciate it. If you haven't heard it from anyone else today, I love you. Love and peace.